Today we're discussing the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So we have a theorem again today. So with our 30, 60, 90 triangle, the length of the hypotenuse, so remember that's the one opposite of our 90-degree angle, is twice the length of the shorter leg. So we have our shorter leg here, it's twice the length of that. So 2n is how we notate that. And then the length of the longer leg is actually the square root of 3 times the shorter leg. So we have n is the shorter one, so we have n square root of 3 this time. And how do we know that? So we can prove that just like we did with the one yesterday. We can prove it using the Pythagorean theorem. So if we have an equilateral triangle here, so then we know all three of our sides are exactly the same length, and we have all three of our angles are the same, so those are all 60s. So if we want to cut this in half, then we have a right triangle. So then this side becomes x and this side becomes x because we've now cut this bottom, our base, in half. So instead of it being 2x, now it's x and x. We now have a 30-degree angle up here in the top two pieces because we've bisected that. So now we have two 30, 60, 90 triangles here. So we see that our shorter leg is x, the hypotenuse is 2x, so that's this first piece that we have. The hypotenuse is twice the length of the shorter leg, so that's the first part. So then the second part that we have to prove here is this longer leg being square root of 3 times the shorter leg. So in order to do that, we're going to use our Pythagorean theorem again. So we're going to take our leg, so x squared plus, we'll call this one y squared equals our 2x squared. Okay? So then we're going to put these together over here. So we're going to subtract x squared from both sides. So we've got y squared equals 2x squared minus x squared. So what is 2x squared? So we have 2x times 2x, we get 4x squared minus x squared. So then what do we end up with here? Well, 4x squared minus an x squared would be 3x squared. So y squared equals 3x squared. And then we're going to take our square root of both sides. So y equals square root of 3 times x, because the square root of x squared would be x. Sorry, let me scoot that over just a bit. So we see that our y is actually the shorter leg, which is x, times the square root of 3, which is what we just set up here. Okay, so let's try some examples now that we've proved that theorem works. So our first example, we're going to find AC. So we have this triangle here. We have a right angle here. We have a 60-degree angle here. So we know this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle. We're trying to find the length of AC. So I'm going to put x right there because that's what I'm trying to find. So I have a hypotenuse and I have my longer leg. So if I look over here, I have my hypotenuse and I have my longer leg that I'm working with. So I'm actually going to find my shorter leg because that's going to help me find the missing piece. So from my hypotenuse to my shorter leg, so BC equals 14. So then what does that tell me about the shorter leg? Well, we know that the shorter leg is half of the hypotenuse. So I know that AB equals half of BC, which is 7. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and label that here. So that's 7 inches. And then if we look back again at our theorem, we know that our shorter leg times the square root of 3 is going to give us our longer leg. So we come over here, we have our shorter leg is 7. So in order to get my longer leg, AC equals AB times, so that was this AB, which is 7 times the square root of 3. So we have 7 square root of 3. Okay, so our x equals 7 square root of 3. And that's your final answer. You don't have to change it to a decimal. If I want you to change them to a decimal, I will let you know in the information for the top of the section. You know, convert this to a decimal rounding to 2 places, or convert it to a decimal rounding to 3 places. So unless I tell you that, just leave it as a radical. Let's do another example here. So for this one, we have a triangle over here. This is a 30, 60, 90. And we know that CD is 6 millimeters. So we're going to be finding CP and DP. Okay? So we have the longer leg. We know that the longer leg, if we look back over here at our information, the longer leg is the short one times the square root of 3. So if we put x here, we know that 6 millimeters equals x square root of 3. So then we're going to solve for x to find our shorter leg. So this is very similar to what we did for those 45, 45, 90s. We're going to divide by square root of 3 on both sides. So those cross each other out, that becomes 1. So we end up with x equals 6 divided by the square root of 3. And if you remember, we don't like those radicals in the denominator, so we're going to multiply by square root of 3 over square root of 3, which is the same thing as 1. So 6 over our square root of 3, and we're going to multiply that by square root of 3 over square root of 3. That's how we're going to get that square root out of the denominator. So square root of 3 times square root of 3. The square roots cross out, and that becomes 3. So we end up with 6 square root of 3 divided by 3 equals x. So then we have to continue to simplify. 3 goes into 6 2 times, 3 goes into 3 1 time. So we have 2 square root of 3 equals x. So we're going to put 2 square root of 3 there for x. So then we still have to find our dp. And we know from our theorem that our hypotenuse is twice the shorter side. So we're going to use that over here. So we're going to be taking our shorter side, which is 2 square root of 3 times 2 will give us dp. 2 times 2 times square root of 3, we end up with 4 square root of 3 equals dp. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put down here this one was CP. Alright, great job. Let's do a couple more examples. So for this next one, we have another 30, 60, 90 triangle here. We have the short side is 4 square root of 3 over 3. We're going to find QR, which is our hypotenuse. Alright, so again, we're going to go back to our original theorem. We have the short side. We want to find the hypotenuse. So we're going to take it times 2. So to find QR, 2 times the short side, which is 4 square root of 3 over 3 equals QR. So then we're going to bring this over. 2 times 4 is 8 square root of 3, and we still have 3 as the denominator. So that is the length of QR. Okay. Last one. Now this one has a little bit of work that goes with it. So we have multiple 30, 60, 90 triangles going on here. So if you see, we have 30, 60, 90 here, a second one, a third one, and a fourth one, and we're trying to find x. So we're just going to split these apart. Okay, so this first one, just going to write this out again. So I have 4 as my hypotenuse, and I'm trying to find this leg over here. So if you remember, hypotenuse to my longer leg, what's going on there? Well, I first have to find the shorter one. I divide by 2, and then I'm going to take that times square root of 3. So from here, I'm going to find the shorter side. I divide by 2, so this is 2. So then to find the longer side, I'm going to take the short one times my square root of 3. So I end up with 2 square root of 3. Okay? Now this long side is the hypotenuse of the next one. So I'm going to go on to the next one. And yes, I realize they're all looking the same size, and that's fine. So my hypotenuse here is 2 square root of 3 this time. So now I'm going to find my shorter side. I'm going to divide by 2. So what is 2 divided by 2? So that would be 1 square root of 3. And then I have to take that times the square root of 3 in order to get this longer leg. So 1 times the square root of 3 is just square root of 3. So then I'm going to take square root of 3 times square root of 3, which we said equals 3. So this longer leg is 3. So we're going to do this one more time. So I'm going to write in this one's 3, this one's 2 square root of 3. So now we're on to the third one. So we have the hypotenuse is 3. I'm going to cut that in half to get my shorter leg. So this is 1.5. And then I'm going to take 1.5 times square root of 3. And I'm just going to leave that like that for my longer one. So this is 1.5 square root of 3. So then I'm going on to my last one here. (1.5 square root of 3). So then to find this one, I have to divide by 2. Well, what's half of 1.5? That would be 0.75, and we still have the square root of 3 there. And then to do this one, I'm going to take it times the square root of 3. So I have 0.75 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Because if you remember, this is this piece. And then I'm taking it times the square root of 3. So these two square root of 3's, those become 3. Because the square roots cross out. So I'm going to take 0.75 times 3, which equals 2.25. So this is 2.25. So that's the longer side of the last one, which is x. So my final answer here, x equals 2.25. And there would be my final answer. Great. I hope you have a good evening. I'll see you tomorrow in class.